Hi there, welcome. Hopefully you're here to find out some information and tips and tricks on EVA Foam in order to make something probably similar to this. Master Chief from the Halo universe, made from EVA Foam, fully wearable, cosplay outfit. It's just done MCM at London, and took me about a month to make. Quite a few things on it I've had to learn, quite a few things I've had to sort of adapt because they haven't quite worked as I wanted them to. So I'm going to show you a few things that might help you, and also some of the information that helped me in the original times when I was trying to find the information. You're going to need to have a computer, you're going to need to download a couple of programs, and you are going to have to spend some money. It's not the cheapest of things, probably looking at around about probably about £100 in total, with your glues, with your EVA foam, and probably with your paint as well. May even take it up a bit more depending on what you want to do. So here we go. Okay, things you're going to need. If you want to do as I've done there, you're going to need a Pepakura program. There's lots of kind people on the internet that have managed to make plans, and they've uploaded them. You can go on to various sites, find them and download them, but they won't work unless you have a program. Now, the program that I use is Pepakura Designer. You can download it for free. You can view things, but you can't do a lot with them, and you need to be able to do things with the actual plans once you've got them. So you need to go onto the internet, look for a search on Google for Tamasoft or Pepakura Designer. You will find the site. Once you've found that site, you can download it, and once you get there, it'll look something like that. So basically you want to go along and download it, and then once you've done that, you can then buy it, and it's a key, and you can see there it's $38 US. I did it on PayPal. Once you've done it, that's it. You don't ever have to do it again. Once you open it up, you will have a design program that is like a CAD file viewer, and as you can see, you can move things around, view them in all sorts of different places. You will also have your pep file as denoted here, so it's across 8 sheets of paper, and you can see the shapes that you will have to cut out. As you can see, that if you click on a certain area and then right click, you'll be able to see what that piece actually denotes, so it gives you an idea of where it's going to go. This piece here, for example, is obviously that piece there. You'd expect it to be the same on the other side, but as I said earlier on, you don't necessarily have to have left and right. If they're the same, they're going to be, you just have to cut it out twice. You only have to cut out one piece, but then you cut the foam out twice. As you can see, this area here is not shown on there, but if you spin it round, there it is, because it's the same both sides. You can zoom in onto these pieces, but you can't do it unless you've got a mouse with a wheel on it. It won't work on if you're using, like I am, with a touchpad. So if you want to be able to zoom in and out on things on both this one and the other one, you need to have a mouse with a wheel on it. But you can see the idea. Basically, you can look at everything from different directions. It gives you the rough shape and see what's there. Unfortunately, this has come from what they call a PEP file, where this little area here would have been a little line of paper. So you make that up by the thickness of the foam. So it doesn't always work perfectly, so you have to sometimes just figure it out for yourself. But pretty good bit of kit. When you download the actual file itself, it will come as a PEP file. So let's have a look. And then you've got there you go, there's another one, and this one is really big, comes out across lots and lots of pieces of paper. What you can do is you can spread this out a bit more so it comes across, but you can pick these up and you can move them so they're in different pieces of paper, whichever you want to do. So you can see all of the pieces you've got. Again, it's exactly the same both ways, so you cut this one out for the right leg and you cut it out the other way for the other leg. You just flip it over. We'll go on to scaling at another time. There's lots of things on the internet about scaling, but for the moment I'm just going to take you through what you require. Okay, to print your files, you're going to need card. Okay, white card. You need it to be card because you need to be able to cut this stuff out and then draw around it. If it's paper, it's a bit too thin, you end up not getting the particularly good lines. You don't have to go super thick on the card. This is 160 grams a meter, and that does perfectly okay. It also feeds through the printer quite nicely. Once you get it through the printer, you will end up with something like that, which has got the lines on it and they match what was on the file, or sometimes they come out like that depending on which one you use to download. Obviously it's got blue lines, it's fine, you can use that one, but you know, it just wastes ink, you don't need it. So ideally you want card. The other thing you're going to need as well, it's not ideal, it's not absolute, but it certainly does help, is if you can get yourself a model of what it is you're going to make. A few reasons really. One of them is that you want to be able to actually visualize what it is that you're building. So if you're building this shoulder pipe piece here, you want to be able to visualize what it's actually going to look like and also what size it's going to be, because sometimes what you see on the PEP file, it doesn't look the same. You're just seeing a flat piece of paper that is now going to fold into what that shape is. So it's worthwhile having a model so that you can refer to it, just so you can see certain bits, because there's not everything's on the PEP file. You don't get everything, so sometimes you have to sort of create your own stuff. Okay, so I got him off of eBay, so yeah, he's been brilliant. You're going to be working with EVA Foam. There you go, that's a part of it. Usually comes in packs of 6. I bought these from Halfords. They were doing a special offer and I managed to get them for £10 for 6, which is pretty cheap actually. Be careful with buying online. I bought 30 of those from an online store on eBay, and they were so substandard I couldn't use them. They were all bubbles and pits within the foam, so I couldn't use them, so I had to send them back. So it's best to buy from a reasonable sort of dealer, somewhere like Halfords. Yeah, they do have deals on fairly regularly. You normally find they're about £14 to £15 for 6, so if you can get £10, then you save yourself some money. Okay, before we actually start cutting, there's different ways of doing the cuts, and this is where having the model will give you an idea of what you're going to need to do. You can see that what we're making is a kneecap. It is on the Pepakura file. It is there to be seen, but sometimes it's not overly clear. This is probably not the best example. But you can see that it's three-dimensional. So you've got to form a three-dimensional image from flat pieces. So we're going to use cuts, and we're also going to use a little bit of heat to form that. Now you can go into very detailed to make it exactly as it should be, in which case, yeah, go ahead, you can see all the small lines and all the curves. Basically my version of that is this. So as you can see, I've got a three-dimensional kneecap, and it looks pretty good. So what I've got to do is I've got to decide whether I'm going to put a bevel cut or an undercut on this bit or this bit, and then I've got to decide how I'm going to make this little curved area here. So I'll show you. Okay, to cut your foam, a lot of people use these type of knives. They're cheap. You normally get a pack of 3 for a couple of pounds. They're okay. They cut fairly well. The problem with me is I find they're not particularly accurate. If you want to cut down through the foam, you usually end up getting a big blade which can bend. If you have it so it's nice and stiff, you end up getting your foam caught on here. The other problem is that you can probably just see there's these little lines which the idea is they should snap off and give you a new blade all the time. They don't always snap off nice and straight. In fact, that one there you could see has bent, so you've got a bent blade to start with. The other thing is that when they snap off, they can tend to hit you in your face, which is never good. So that's the sort of the big blade, and that's a smaller blade. They're okay, they're fine. There's plenty of them around. You can buy lots of them for a lot of money. However, I prefer a scalpel. Scalpel blades are a lot stiffer. They don't move as much. They're hardened steel, so they last longer. They are stupidly sharp as well, obviously from a scalpel, so you get really nice crisp lines with them. I bought 100 blades in one go because I use them for other things, but the last time I checked it was 50 blades for £7.50, and that was free postage from a site. I don't think I've used more than 50 for the whole of Master Chief, so you know you are going to have to use the knives. In order to remove them, you can see there's a little slot here, so you just lift the blade, pop it off, and then you end up with the actual blade holder. You can get different sorts. The ones that I use are non-sterile, but this is a sterile one. It's no real difference, it's just that they're slightly more money. I bought these ones by mistake. So they come in a sealed packet. So the idea is that you pop it out, and then you'll see that it lines up with the little groove. Push it on about halfway, and then what you do is you just pop it through into what you're working on, and there it is. That will last probably 3 or 4 times longer than what the blade would on the disposables. Also, when you get rid of them, obviously you're going to end up with quite a few spare blades that are left. Make sure you got a little holder to put them all in. Do not put them in the rubbish, okay? They are stupidly sharp, so collect them all up. When you've got a few of them, take them to your local dump or your disposal area. Tell them that they're sharps, and they'll put them somewhere for you that's going to be sharps. Okay, don't put them in the bin. The other thing as well as you're working with these is be very careful. Try to, if possible, always work cut away from you. Always try and keep your fingers clear. I, in the early stages, used to wear a pair of Kevlar gloves, which did save me a few times. And then as I got better and I was a bit more careful, then I stopped using them. But I would suggest you wear gloves, because you can cut through very, very deep very easily with these. You are going to need a ruler. So a metal ruler is what you require. I've got 2 or 3 of them, because when you're working with lots of pieces of paper and bits of foam, it's easy to put it down, it gets buried, and then you can't find it. So I've always got one handy that I can carry on working, because there's nothing worse than having to stop what you're doing to search for a ruler. You'd be amazed at how easy they are to lose them. The reason it's metal is because you're going to be cutting along the edge of it. If you've got a plastic one, you'll just keep shaving off plastic until eventually you don't have a ruler left. So the metal one is what you require. A pair of scissors, nice and sharp. You'll need that for cutting edges that have not quite gone straight, and to tidy things up. And sometimes it's worth actually cutting out the piece that you're going to be cutting, so that you're not having to work on a huge great big piece of foam, so you can cut easier. Okay, so a nice pair of scissors. You're also going to need a glue gun. I picked this one up from Aldi's. It was $9.99, came with a few of the sticks. Generally these are around about £15, and it's normally around about £10 to £15 for about 25 sticks. You can get special offers, there's lots of them online. These are the 11mm, and that's probably the size to have. It works quite well, and yeah, they don't leak so much. The smaller ones, the smaller sticks tend to keep on oozing, and you lose a lot of your glue. You're also going to need a heat gun, hot air gun, and that's for shaping and for doing detail work. Okay, so you're going to need one of those. And a nice to have, but not necessarily definite, but it's nice to have, is a soldering iron. I use this for detail work, also for if I've had a bit of an overspill with some glue. You can actually use the end of it to smooth the glue out, and it's better than sanding it down. Obviously be careful with these, they are very, very, very hot, and if you was to leave it on, you can end up causing some damage. Plus also, once you have turned it off, it stays hot for a very, very long time, so make sure you've got a decent storage area for it. I just use a mug, actually put it in there, and that tends to stop it from burning anything. Okay, you're going to be working with blades, so you're going to have a surface in which to cut on. These self-healing cutting mats are ideal. This is an A2 version. If you can get an even bigger one, then better. The bigger the better is what you want. You are going to sometimes be working with some fairly large areas, so you want to have as much of the area that's covered as possible. If you start digging into the kitchen table, you're not going to be very popular, and it's also a bit more non-slip as well. It just means that you're a bit more steady, which you want when you're working with blades. Okay, so now you've got your PEP file printed off, and you can see it will come on however many sheets of paper. This one is 8, but what you will end up with is you will see you've got part of your design, and this stretches across 2 sheets. So what you need to be able to do is join that up. So if you look at this one, you can see that the lines end at an edge, at a border. I believe there is a way of setting up your printer to not have this border. I can't do it, so I've had to obviously do it this way. So one of the things you can do to help yourself is if you put your ruler right on the edge of the lines and then cut that piece away, you will end up with something like this. And as you can see, there is no border. So when you now put that up against the other side, you can now line that up, and that forms your shape. And with the overlap, you run some sellotape along it, like so, and that will now stick together. You can then go round, and then you can cut out the shape, and you now see where the sellotape is and that's your shape. Be careful when you cut. If you're cutting through, try not to cut through something else, because it will cause you problems. What I tend to do is just very roughly cut with a pair of scissors the shape out, and then put that to one side. It does make it easier when you're able to then cut these areas out. You will sometimes think when you're doing your Pepakura that you know, there should be two of everything, but not necessarily. This piece is fairly generic, so it doesn't matter if it's for the left shin or for the right shin. You only genuinely have to cut one side or one piece, because it's going to match one side to the other side. So take your time, cut something out, make a note of what it is. So for example, this is shin, because if you end up dropping it on the floor one day, you may find it a couple of weeks later and wonder where it came from. That's a fairly obvious piece, but there'll be other bits. But just make a note of it, and then what I tend to do is I'll keep them together in an envelope, and that way then I can use them again. Or if I've made a mistake, I can always go back to that envelope and very quickly find that part. Okay, so basically that's what you're looking to end up with, is a shape, and because it's card, you're able to then draw around it quite easily, which is it better than if it was on paper. There we go. Okay, so an example is that on this one here, we've got a central part, which when it cuts out is like so. It doesn't matter if it's left knee or right knee. We've also got these two wing sections. If I cut this one out, it's exactly the same as that one. So I don't need to cut this one as well. I can just use this one, cut my piece, and then turn it over and cut another piece. So we've only had to cut two things. It saves you time, saves you a lot of time. This is probably the most boring part of it all, is the stenciling and cutting out. I use a ballpoint pen. I find that they draw nice straight lines or nice fine lines, but they don't rub off. If you use an indelible marker, they tend to sit on the surface and you get it all over yourself. So when you're ready, ideally you want to start at the edges so that you don't waste anything, but I'm just for ease of this, I'm going to show you. So put your shape down, draw your line, doesn't have to be super accurate, because you're going to actually cut this with a ruler. It's just to give you an idea. But as you can see with the card, we're able to trace along the edge and it doesn't bend. If you use the paper, you'd be making marks all the time. So there we go. So we now have our shape, and it won't rub off. So what I could do now is turn that over. I could now draw my other section. And then I can draw my other piece.